Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. So this will be a sad video, honestly. It won't be about music or movies like the past few videos have been about. Instead, this is more of an announcement. My pet cat Halle has moved on to the Rainbow Bridge. This was a week ago, and it's sad, of course. I miss her, as you might have guessed, but made less sad due to a few factors. For example, she has been in a steady decline for a few years now, so I was already mourning her and her situation even before she was euthanized. Also, she was 22 years old. I mean, that's a long time for a cat. Vets described her as very geriatric. So she lived a long life, and it was about time, even though I need to be convinced of that. When I was making the decision, people were telling me, essentially everyone was saying, it's time, you should do it. And I hesitated for weeks. I didn't want to, but eventually I relented and had her put down at home, which again is a very sad moment, but at least she didn't die like in some horrible, like tragic scene or anything like that. It was, for the most part, it was calm. I mean, she always hated needles, so when they stuck the first needle in her, she bit my finger, which, I actually thought was pretty funny. She fought to the end, I think. But she's gone now, and we had her buried. So there's a burial plot I could visit anytime I want. And that's it. So now what's the next phase of my life? What do I do from here? Well, I adjust because, like I said, the last 3 years were rough. She was high maintenance, so I had to do a lot to make sure she was okay. So she took up quite a bit of my schedule, and now I have suddenly this free time. And also I suddenly have this freedom. I can go wherever I want without having to worry about, who's going to take care of her while I'm away, things like that. So it's just different, I mean, again, I miss her. It's someone who has been a part of my life for over 20 years, suddenly not there anymore. You go home and there's no one there. So that's something I had to get used to, which I feel like I'm getting used to that. I think, to me, the biggest issue, and I'm not sure if I can blame other people for this, but a lot of them are suddenly asking, oh, are you getting a new one? Or even worse, they insist that I get a new one. Like, oh, you're going to get a new one. You're going to do it. It's like, yeah, wait a minute, okay? Like, first of all, you can't replace an animal like that. Something that, has a big part of my life, a piece of my heart. You don't just replace them. It doesn't work like that. She was a unique pet. She just had a personality, and, you can't just throw another animal in her place. It just isn't the same. So that's the first thing. Also, give me some time at least. Time to take this all in, because, it's not easy. So I think a lot of people are going to insist that I get a new one or two. There's going to be that push. And it's like, well, I don't know. Maybe in the future, I may prefer, having the freedom, having that, no more responsibility. I feel like, I could perhaps spend the rest of my life without a pet, even though people might be angry to hear that. They might disapprove, saying, oh, the poor animals in the shelter, and you don't do anything about it. They're suffering and you don't care. I mean, of course it's not that. Of course I care. It's just, this idea that I must have a pet. I was hesitant to take in Halle in the first place. 22 years ago, I wasn't even sure I would do it. I had to be talked into it. And of course I don't regret it. I loved her very much, and I wouldn't change a thing regarding that. But now, it's 22 years later, I don't know if I'll do it. It's something I'll have to think about, and I'm hoping people don't do a really hard push to get me to do something about it, or, get angry if I decide not to. So that's what I'm going to have to cope with for a while. So that's going to be a challenge. Other than that, I'll just think of her in my own way. I've already made 2 videos of her on this channel. I have 2 slideshows called My Cat Movie. The first one I made about 5-6 years ago, and the second one I made about a year ago, so you can check those out. If you go to my post tab, I have only one post, and that's a picture that I used to have as my profile pic for YouTube. I changed it recently to my own face, and my channel used to be called GFH and Cat, meaning and cat, but now I've changed that as well. So I guess what's the lesson or the takeaway here? It's just that things change. People and pets come and go. You just have to cope with it as it happens. It's sad, of course. It's, it may be a difficult adjustment. It may be less difficult than you imagine. But we all deal with it in our own way. And we keep going. I know I will do my best to, just keep Halle in my memory while, looking to the future. Right now I have quite a distraction. I'm going on a trip in a week. So I'm getting ready for that. That's been taking up my time. And, go from there. So, yeah, if you lost a pet, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope you're coping as well. It's something that, is going to happen sooner or later in your life. Luckily, I had essentially time to prepare for it. I mean, there was a moment 3 years ago where I thought that she would die right away. She didn't. And if this happened 3 years ago, it would have been way more difficult. But as it is, it's just, it's not as difficult. But it's still not easy. It never is. Especially if you really loved your pet. So, I don't know. I guess I'll leave it at that. Hopefully my next video will be of a happier topic. And until then, thank you for watching. And I'll catch you on the next one. Okay, thanks.